Hello, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the TC Sportscast. Um, Back here again with another stream. Um, Very pleased today because, unlike my previous broadcast, which you should go check out, I have, in fact, made a friend. Um, Not recently. I made this friend quite a while ago, but I'd like everybody to say hello to my good friend, my good longtime friend, Micah. Say hello, Micah. I hope that everything is good where you're at. Micah, my trusty counterpart today. He is a well. Actually, how about you introduce yourself? What are you? What's going on in your life right now? Like, we're both in college. Where are you going to college? What are you going for? Just basic introductions. It seems we're having some trouble with your audio. Yeah, we cannot hear you. In the meantime, though, well, I would like to have you keep talking, but nobody can hear you. Let's see. Oh, it's worked. It's working.
Is it working now?
Hold on. Welcome back to the TC Sportscast, where we do things very unofficially here. Um, oh, how nice it would be to have a production team. Anyway, so would you care to explain once more why you're a Giants fan?
Yeah. Madden growing up, the Broncos were always taken, and Peyton Manning was a pretty cool guy at the time. And I was like, well, is there like another Manning? Like, how can I do this? The Giants are blue. Blue is my favorite color. So I was like, okay, well, that's one step in the door. And Eli Manning, I was like, oh my God, his brother's in the NFL. I want to play as him. So started playing with Eli Manning. At this point, they were still pretty good in like 2013, 2012. And I think over the years, Odell Beckham, they drafted, he made the Odell catch, and then we got Saquon Barkley, and I was just kind of like, man, like, this is awesome. And then, of course, 2017, the Giants ended up going to the playoffs that year. Odell couldn't catch anything to save his life. And, I mean, that was kind of history. But point is, because of Eli Manning practically and Odell Beckham Jr. is the reason why I'm a Giants fan. I've been a Giants fan for almost 10 years now, and we've only made the playoffs twice. And, it's rough. I hate it. It's horrible. But we can talk
Yeah,
about that later.
yeah, we will. I understand your strife. I understand thy struggle. I understand thy commitment to pain. And because I have known also a team that has only made the playoffs twice in the last 2 years. Now, one of them resulted in a Super Bowl, which I'm very, happy about. And we are not the better franchise though. We've only what? We've won 3 Super Bowls and we've lost 5 for
Yep.
a total of 8 appearances, which is better than the Giants,
Yep.
I think. But
I believe you're correct.
yeah. So, it's not like if we had 4 wins and 8 appearances or 9 appearances, then we could maybe be considered the better franchise, but as it stands,
We're pretty
I think
pretty
not.
even right now.
I think not. Especially when you beat the undefeated Patriots team in '07, and then you beat
Oh,
nearly the exact same Patriots team in 2011.
yes.
So,
Playoff Eli. Playoff Eli.
yes, playoff Eli. Playoff Eli was like playoff Nick Foles in 2017. It was very
It's wonderful.
he worked miracles that
Yes.
that only Giants fans could fathom. No other fandom of any team could fathom exactly what he was able to pull off in those years.
2017 too. He was pretty good until Odell dropped everything. I think we would have beaten the Packers.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, Eli was he's sort of in the dusk of his career, and maybe not.
He still spun it. He spun it at the playoffs. I don't know. I was
very
watching
slowly.
tape.
He spun it very slowly. Um,
He still spun it just that one year.
with a glove. As soon as when a quarterback wears a
It's true.
glove because they like a glove, that's not good. But when a quarterback wears a glove because they have to because of age, that's even worse.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, Russell Wilson wore gloves this year, and he's bad. So
Oh, he
you know
cooked.
exactly
Oh,
how
he
that goes.
cooked.
He he burnt. He burnt everything he attempted to cook, and then Sean Payton paid him to leave. So
Yep.
you know how that goes. So anyway, piggybacking off of your entire Giants fandom, is we can see the Giants beanie in the background, of course. Um, I think it would be a fantastic jumping off point to talk about your very interesting quarterback situation this year. Um, what do you make of the Giants quarterbacking situation this year? I know you have a couple all stars on the roster. Would you like to tell our audience who maybe is going to be your starter, or who you think
Listen,
what your opinions are?
listen. All right. Here's the predicament, and I'm going to be very raw and just straight to the point with you here. Um, we're screwed. Daniel Jones is going to start. I know that we have Drew Lock, but we didn't pay Drew Lock, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars.
$40 million a year. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. I don't care what anybody says. Drew Lock is good. He might be better, but we're also paying a guy a ton of money to maybe try to see if he's any good and if there's going to be any year where he could be at least potentially decent. It would have been last year. So we're screwed. We're screwed. I don't know what you want from me. Do I think Drew Lock is going to start? No, I think that's the New York media. I think Daniel Jones is going to be the starter because he's more athletically talented. But in terms of a football IQ standpoint, he's horrible. He's awful. The offensive line is average. The wide receivers are. We have one. We have Neighbors. All right, that's it. That's it.
Um, Very fair. That seems like a very fair assessment. Um, do you think that the Giants will be incentivized based off of Daniel Jones's contract structure? This is according to Yahoo.com. The Giants extended Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million deal in 2022. However, it appears that they are able to basically completely rescind the deal after this year, 2024. Jones's contract includes no guarantees after this season and is a manageable dead cap hit. Um, because it appears that the Giants have a sort of evacuation strategy for Daniel Jones after this year. Do you think that will incentivize the coaching staff to play him this year to see if he's going to be any good, to see if they want to pay him down the road?
Well, I feel like you kind of have to exercise this. You have to exercise it from a political standpoint because if you're looking at it, the Giants paid Daniel Jones all this money, what, 2 years ago? And so what happens when you pay this guy all this money and then all of a sudden you're like, actually, no, let's just go ahead and get rid of him? Like, no, like you're going to try to see if you can at least make the deal look like it was worth it at the time. Now, ultimately, I think that the Giants should get rid of Daniel Jones. If they will, we'll find out. Um, but I feel like I just feel like they have to start him. Like it's a bad look to bench a guy on the last year of his deal when he's been the starter since Eli Manning has been on the team.
I don't know if it's necessarily a bad look, though. It might be a bad financial move because you're paying him $40 million to not play. Again, we can go back
Exactly.
to the Broncos. We're paying Russell Wilson $45 million to pack up and go to Pittsburgh. But
No,
I don't
exactly.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's necessarily a bad look. I think it's more so just a bad financial decision. I think
Yes.
what makes
And that was the
sense.
ownership's problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. What makes more sense to me is that they pay or they don't pay Daniel Jones in the future. They play him now because it's the last year of the contract that they are binded to stay with him. They play him because he's the safer option. Daniel Jones is more of a loose cannon, or Daniel Jones. Drew Lock is more of a
Drew
loose
Lock.
cannon. Yes, Drew Lock is more of a loose cannon. You don't know what to expect with him a lot more often. But if Drew Lock has the kind of season that he did at the very end of the Broncos 2019 season, then you could see possibly something special with the Giants roster, I don't see it happening. It makes sense to play Drew Lock this year, at least the first half of the season, to see if he can replicate his 2022 self. I just don't see them sticking with him long term in the future. It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, all you have to do is just take a look at his stats, his career stats. He has around 12,500 yards passing for 209 yards per game, 62 touchdowns, 40 interceptions, almost a 1.5 ratio, which is not good. I mean, if we're talking, quarterbacks in 1976, that's, that's franchise quarterback territory. But this is 2024 and the game has changed. A completion percentage was 64% and a horrendous quarterback record. I mean, it's just awful. So, I mean, I don't, in my opinion, I don't see how you at least play Drew Lock probably the first half of the year, give him until probably Thanksgiving. And then
Drew Lock or Daniel Jones?
Sorry, Daniel Jones. You play Daniel Jones the first half of the year. You give him probably till about Thanksgiving. If you're, by November 4-6, or 3-7, or you're having a rough time by that time of the year. I don't see the harm in replacing Daniel Jones with Drew Lock as the starter at all.
No. Well, there is one thing, and I love that graphic that you had up, but I think also with Daniel Jones, we can't forget that his rookie season and his second year, he fumbled the ball a ridiculous amount of times. See, I think he in his rookie year, he fumbled the ball 18 times. That's unacceptable. And while his turnovers have gone down, he still throws the ball to the other team all the time. Half the time, I'm like, where are you throwing the ball? So, and also, I feel like ownership has put Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll in a horrible situation because, from what I understand from the New York media and just from people on the inside, in terms of, I'm not an insider at all, but this is just from what I've heard around, is that the ownership is the reason why Daniel Jones got that massive contract. Daboll didn't want to keep him. He wanted to move on. And so what happens when you bench this guy now and you start Drew Lock if the record is bad? I feel like it kind of puts the head coach, maybe GM will be fine, but the head coach is in a bad spot. Daboll would be in a bad spot in some aspect. I'm not saying he's going to get fired, but he's definitely going to be closer to that hot seat than a lot of people realize.
Well, especially after you guys fired Gettleman from managing anything in the front office. I mean, Gettleman was like, you know the fable about Midas. He could turn anything he touched into gold.
Yes.
Gettleman, he turned anything he touched into ash. Like it was a nightmare while that guy was controlling.
It was
the franchise.
horrible.
It was an absolute nightmare. You draft Daniel Jones. What was Daniel Jones drafted 6th overall?
He was number 6. He was number 6. Yes.
Out of Duke.
Yes. Out of Duke.
Anyway, so Gettleman.
Yes. No. Go on. Because also the Saquon signing, which I'm glad that we had Saquon when we did, but also you don't draft a running back that early. We had other priorities on our team. We had Eli Manning in the last year of his deal. Maybe try to get some offensive linemen, some big boys up front. He was a horrible general manager.
Yeah, he was a terrible general manager. He was like Elway post Peyton Manning. It was just nightmares. Yes. It was just complete nightmares for both of the fan bases. Here's what I don't understand though about, if you don't start Drew Lock this year, all you're doing is you're either missing completely or you're prolonging Daboll getting his hands on the guy. And if you remember Josh Allen, 2020, 2021, that was peak Josh Allen. And that was because Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator and was able to rein Josh Allen in. That is when Josh Allen looked his best. And that is when the Buffalo Bills were in their Super Bowl window. After last year, in my opinion, with the Buffalo Bills specifically, they're out of their Super Bowl window. They're going to be they'll probably be in the playoffs. They'll probably make a decent run to at least the divisional round, but they're not going to see the Super Bowl anytime soon. Daboll was able to rein in a wild, uncontrolled Josh Allen and was able to make him a serious top quarterback in the league. You have Mahomes, Josh Allen, and then everybody else is kind of debatable. And by everybody else, I mean maybe 6 others are debatable after that point. So if you don't give Daboll Drew Lock right now, Drew Lock is like a less mobile Josh Allen in some ways. He's a little, even for Josh Allen standards, he's a little less controlled, and he's not as fast as Josh Allen, but I don't see the harm in letting Dable work with Drew Lock in a serious way and actually try to compete this year, rather than just throwing in Daniel Jones again and seeing him get murdered behind his mediocre offensive line. I don't know, but what's your take on that?
Well, I think that everything that you're saying, it sounds good and it's very logical, but also they're in New York. The media is relentless. Unless you're Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to hear it. The media doesn't want to ask Aaron Rodgers anything right now, and I don't blame him. When you're talking about starting Drew Lock over Daniel Jones, everybody's gonna lose it. Everybody's gonna lose it. And also, I would argue too that Josh Allen athletically was a lot more gifted than Drew Lock is. I think Drew Lock is a capable quarterback, especially from what we've seen recently. I think he could be good, but I don't know how much you can get out of a Drew Lock compared to how much he got out of a Josh Allen, because Drew Lock has great arm talent, but he's not as mobile. He can move around a little bit. He can get you out of a difficult situation, but he's mainly just the type of guy that can get good checkdowns and throw it deep periodically. He's not going to be like a game-to-game starter consistently. I don't see that for him. I mean, he had a shot in Denver while it was, a horrible roster that he was with. I don't understand. I don't think that talent-wise he's nearly as capable as a Daniel Jones is.
That you don't think he's as capable as Daniel Jones, like in just terms of being a functional starter for 17 games?
When I look at both prospects of Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, I think Drew Lock is the better quarterback, but I think Daniel Jones has more athletic ability. And I feel like with Dable, he's gonna he has to try to get something out of Daniel Jones, because we've seen what he can do. He's run as fast as Lamar Jackson. He can scramble when he needs to, and he can throw the deep ball periodically.
That's a very fair assessment, I think. The only problem I have with looking at a quarterback as an athletic talent is that what quarterbacks that are mobile and are known for mobility? Daniel Jones, what is Daniel Jones known for?
Running.
The tripping over himself in that one Eagles game a few years back? Is that what Daniel Jones is known for?
Yeah,
I don't want that guy to be my starter. I'd rather have Drew Lock, who's got he's, again, if we can take a look at Drew Lock's stats, I mean, again, here's Daniel Jones's stats, completely mediocre, but, we'll get to those playoff stats in a second. Here's Drew Lock's stats over the course of his career. Now, he started less games. He has less yards. He has less yards per game, which is unfortunate. 28 touchdowns and 23 interceptions is worrying. Over 23 games, that stat is worrying. That's an interception a game and 5 touchdowns more. It's not the stats of a starter. But in the right system and in the hands of a good coordinator, he could not work wonders, but he could effectively manage a game and throw a few effective deep balls within the course of that game. Now, again, one more thing. Mm-hmm. When you take a look, again, what is Daniel Jones known for? If you're going to make a case for his mobility, you can make the case for other quarterbacks' MOs being mobility, but what has it won them in the past? You have a guy, for instance, somebody like Michael Vick. Michael Vick, at least with this generation, is revered because he was on a Madden cover in 2004 and is really good on Ultimate Team. I believe Michael Vick's stats, he over the course of his career, which was a long career minus the little incident he had in the middle where he couldn't play for a while, he had he had a little over 100 touchdowns and a little over 60 interceptions. I don't understand what the big deal with a lot of these mobile quarterbacks are. Lamar Jackson, if Lamar Jackson's best chance to win a Super Bowl is this year with Derrick Henry. And that's because he has Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson cannot win a Super Bowl by himself, and he didn't do it last year with second-rate wide receivers.
I don't think Lamar will win a Super Bowl, if I'm being quite honest.
I don't think so either, because quarterbacks aren't meant to run the ball. Quarterbacks are meant to throw the ball.
Yes.
So, you have Jalen Hurts. The only reason Jalen Hurts was seen as an MVP candidate in 2022 is because his roster was insane that year. They were probably the second best roster to the 49ers that year. And the only reason the 49ers didn't put up a better fight in the NFC Championship game is because Brock Purdy tore out his elbow in that game. That's the only reason they didn't do better in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. So if you take a look at a lot of these mobile quarterbacks, they can't do it without a lot of significant help because defenses eventually recognize he's going to run. So they just eye the quarterback.
Yes.
So I think in terms of taking risks, it's sort of like the Dollar Tree version of, do you want, like in my first show, Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford? That's what this conversation is really down to. Is Dollar Tree, Jared Goff, or Matthew Stafford?
Listen, eventually they're gonna start Drew Lock, but they have to start Daniel Jones first. They have to. He's gonna get benched most likely. He has made so many mistakes. He doesn't know how to execute reads. He doesn't know how to go from first read to second read to third read correctly. And he does rush all the time, like you said. But I just think because of how much money he's getting paid, because of his athletic ability, and because he's been with the team for so long, that they have to start him first. I don't think that they should start him first, but I just think that they will start him first.
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, it makes most financial sense, and it makes most sense. Actually, now that you said it earlier that it's a bad look that if they didn't start him. Now I understand where that's coming in because it makes sense. Number one, for financial reasons to start him. That way you can try to maximize whatever of the $40 million you paid him. Because why?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? But also, it does save a little bit of face in terms of, well, we paid him $40 million. We tried him out again this year. He's continued to show he doesn't work, so we're going to start the guy behind him. And again,
exactly. I also think go on.
I was going to say it makes sense to start him for like a minimum of at least the beginning six to 8 games of the season.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I also think that the New York media as well is the reason why we're even talking about this right now is because of the New York media. I don't think in most teams would ever be talking about like a Daniel Jones, Drew Lock type of like quarterback debate as much as it just like it makes conversation. People are going to start talking about it, like, you know, they mention it. So like to me, it's just there's no debate that Daniel Jones is going to start. It's just for how long.
The only thing that increases is his yards per game, and I don't know how that happened, but just over 9,000 yards, 47 touchdowns, 35 interception for a 1.34 ratio. His ratio with 2022 was 1.55. Completion percentage goes down by 0.2%, and his quarterback record is horrendous. Horrendous. It's awful. So I just don't understand. Again, how in the long I don't understand how they've kept him beyond 2021. I don't understand the Giants thinking in any of this at all.
No, not at all. It's a horrible decision in general. The only reason why he even played well when he made the playoffs was because Daboll was like, okay, let's get you in like filled up with bubble wrap. We're gonna do a ton of motions. We're gonna use Saquon Barkley, so we're gonna fake it to the wide receiver, give it to the running back, and do a little RPO action. And the offensive line was able to hold up long enough where he actually could like manage it. But that's not his offense. I don't think it's his offense. I just think that Daniel Jones was in a contract year. He probably worked a little harder, studied the playbook a little bit more. And honestly, like Daboll was just like, all right, we'll just make things easy for you, and then we'll see what happens.
But it's not replicable 2 years in a row. You can't have the whole offense depend on Saquon. If you remember that quote from Jerry Jones, the offense runs through Ezekiel Elliott. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The offense does not. And that's not just a Cowboy. That wasn't just a 2022 Cowboys problem. That's a universal NFL problem. If the offense does not run through your quarterback, that's a problem. If your quarterback
look at the Titans.
Exactly. If the quarterback is not skilled enough or at a minimum intelligent enough at understanding the game to have the offense be allowed to run through him, then you have a problem. Just like in 2022 with the Denver Broncos, Nathaniel Hackett said that the offense was going to run through Russell Wilson. not only was the whole organization a disaster that year, Russell Wilson can only run one type of offense, and it's equivalent
Yes.
to the 2013 Seahawks offense when they won a Super Bowl. Have a
Yes.
great defense, have a decent offense, have a good running game. Russell Wilson will get you there. But
Yes.
at the end of the day, Russell Wilson is a game manager. He's a very mobile, very talented game manager. That's what he
Yes.
kind of always has been. He's had a lot of help in the past. So when you take a look at somebody like Daniel Jones, he's a game manager and he's not even good at that.
No.
So with that, I think it would be appropriate to now talk about my team, who as you can see, uh, exist. That's about all they do.
Oh yes.
That's about all they do. They just exist.
Oh
And
yes.
not only do they exist to cause me constant misery. So, the Denver Broncos have a little bit of an interesting situation boiling up. A few days before the draft, they traded for Zach Wilson, which a lot of people didn't see coming. I mean, there were trade rumors about it, but a lot of people didn't see the move coming that we would trade for Zach Wilson, and a lot of the reason for that is because most people knew and even believed that we would be taking a quarterback in the draft. So the trading for Zach Wilson really brought up a lot of questions about, well, are the Broncos going to draft a quarterback? And that is exactly what happened. We traded for Zach Wilson, and then a few days later, we in fact drafted Bo Nix. Now, the question with Bo Nix, a lot of people, I don't know if you understand this, Micah. Post draft, a lot of people gave the Broncos incredibly harsh draft grades concerning Bo Nix. They gave us from like D pluses all the way up to B's, and B was being very generous. A lot of people seem to underestimate exactly who Bo Nix is and what he can get done on the football field. I personally don't understand it. I think Bo Nix was probably at least at the least the fourth best prospect out of the six that got
Yes.
drafted. And if you don't remember, in order it was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, and then last was Bo Nix at 12. So I think out of all those, Bo Nix was at least better, in my opinion, than JJ McCarthy and Drake May. I'm not impressed with Drake
Ooh.
May. I'm not impressed with Drake May. We could talk about that a little bit, but we'll talk about Bo Nix first. I'm not impressed with Drake May mostly because North Carolina and at number 3. We just talked about a guy who came out of Duke at number 6. Anyway, it's very similar. But I think Bo Nix is at least better than JJ McCarthy and Drake May. I don't know what you make of people thinking that he's not as good as a lot of the other prospects. But what do you think about our draft grades being pretty low and about Bo Nix in general?
Listen, that is it's really interesting because I was actually not very high on Bo Nix before we drafted him. I saw a couple of his college games, and I wasn't very impressed because the offense was just very tampered down. A lot of just screen passes and checkdowns. I think actually being able to break down his film a little bit and looking at all the players that we drafted, we actually had a pretty decent draft. And I think that Bo Nix he's not a top 2 quarterback from the draft. I wouldn't really say he's a top 3 quarterback. I would agree with you. I think he's definitely like top 4 prospect. The main reason is, well, one, he's 24 years old.
He's 24. Yes.
Yes. So he's one of the older quarterbacks in the draft. He's currently the same age as Joe Burrow. He needs to get his reps right now. But a great thing because of that, or because he's so old, is that he got to play college for so long. So we've seen a lot of looks. He's seen a lot of coordinators. And I just think that when you look at a guy who makes good decisions, Bo Nix is the type of guy to do that. I think he's a great fit with Sean Payton. I think that he has more throwing ability than what was shown when he was in college, especially with Oregon. And I think that he's gonna be able to actually transition to the NFL a lot better than quarterbacks like Drake May. JJ McCarthy, I'm a little bit iffy on as well. I think that Bo Nix is definitely better than him. Maybe not talent wise, but at least in terms of ready to play now, Bo Nix is the guy that you want. Besides Caleb Williams and besides Jaden Daniels.
I can get on board that. Joe Burrow is actually 27.
Ooh, okay.
Because Joe Burrow was old when he was drafted as well.
Burrow was drafted when he was 24 years old.
Yes. So they were.
That's
I think. Yeah, that's what you meant. Is that they were the same age when they were drafted, and Joe Burrow took his team to the Super Bowl in his second year.
Yes.
Which was something that is not often done. I think the last time it was done was Roethlisberger in 2005.
I believe so.
But that was Bill Cowher's team, and that team was really good. So it makes sense.
Yes.
I think even with somebody like Bo Nix, I think there could be an argument for him to be ranked even above Michael Penix. And the reason I say that is more specifically for the injury issues that Michael Penix has. Michael Penix has a long history of injuries. Bo Nix does not. I don't think, even when he didn't play the full season in 2021 with Auburn, do you know if that was an injury issue? Because I don't think it was.
I would probably say it wasn't, but I'll let you keep talking more.
Because they sat him for the last 4 games. But that might have just been issues with play at Auburn. But we'll get to his Auburn days and stuff and that stuff.
Yes.
I think the only two quarterbacks that I think certainly rank above Bo Nix in my opinion is Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, and that's just based off of pure arm talent, pure playmaking ability, pure athleticism. I think they're both more athletic than him. Bo Nix has put up some rushing yards of his own, but I think Caleb Williams is a better improviser. He's got better he's got better arm angles and can throw it on the run a little bit better than Bo Nix. Again, Penix, especially at this level, you have the high school level, which is you just have to be decent to play in high school, and then in college you have to be above average to great, and then the NFL, not only do you have to be a good player, but you also have to have the physique. And when you have somebody like Michael Penix, who's incredibly injury prone, playing against monsters like Calais Campbell, if he's even in the league, I can't remember. He was on the Falcons before, I think.
He's a free agent currently.
Yeah, and he's old. He won't be signed. But when you have literal monsters, pinning their ears back and trying to kill you every play, injury questions have to come into play. They have to, and you can't get around that. And when Bo Nix is less injury prone than Michael Penix, I think that's something that seriously should be taken into account.
Yes.
So I want to put up some stats from Bo Nix's Auburn days. So this is Bo Nix's stats in the SEC. He was with Auburn for 3 years, and he played 34 games with them, started at least 34 games with them. He passing yards just over 7,000, 213 yards per game, 39 touchdowns, 16 interceptions for a ratio of 2.44, which is quite good in general, and then a completion percentage of just under 60%, which is not good. And I hope you like the name of my Bo Nix segment. Calling it Bo Nix or Bo Tricks Denver fans into having hope. So he very well could do. We've gotten got before by other guys, namely a guy who's on your roster, Drew Lock. We thought it was a new era with him. So but I think that's something that also has to be taken into account. Is again the Bo Nix in the SEC struggled. Now that could be the makings of a younger player having less experience. He was a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior while in the SEC. Now, while at Oregon, he was a senior, and then a fourth-year senior, and then a fifth-year senior. And if you take a look at those stats, in 2 years, almost 900 more yards than he had at Auburn. with 300 yards per game, a touchdown to interception ratio of 7.4, completion percentage of almost 75%, and a quarterback record of 22.5. And that's in the Pac-12. So I don't know if that's a question of if Bo Nix performed better for two reasons, and you could make this case. The SEC is a much more difficult conference than the Pac-12, and everybody knows that the Pac-12 is pathetic. And Oregon, the second reason, Oregon played to Bo's strength, which is screens, checkdowns, over the middle, crossing patterns, receivers getting run after the catch yards. What do you think?
Oh man, I think okay. When you talk about Bo Nix, I especially now that he's left the team, it's really interesting to talk about Oregon as a football program. I think that their team was very talented, actually. I think it's still very talented. So I can't help but think that his stats, obviously, he fit very well in that system, and so he had to do a lot of screens and checkdowns and like throws over the middle, which he was like very good at.
That does make sense. Troy Franklin had almost 1,700 yards in receiving.
Yes. Yes.
But here's another interesting stat. So I went back and I watched all of Bo Nix's touchdown passes from 2022, which was his first year at Oregon, and that was before he had any repertoire established with the Oregon
players,
receivers, or anybody. Yes, and I went back and watched all of his touchdown passes. 38% of his touchdown passes were throws that were either screens or under 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. 24% were under 10 yards, 21% were under 20 yards, 17% of his touchdown passes were over 20 yards. Now, this is only for the 2022 season. This doesn't account for the 2023 season where he threw 45 touchdown passes. In this season, he threw 29. Now, in my opinion, taking a look at these stats from a quarterback who threw 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions that season, I think those stats kind of debunk the fact that people have been calling him a checkdown merchant. But what do you make of those statistics? I think they're if anything, it proves the opposite, that he can make the deep throws when he wants to and when he needs to. But the way the offense at Oregon was built required him to make that first read of over the middle or a screen pass. So what do you think about those?
Yes. Oh, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think that he's a lot more talented than what Oregon needed him to do, especially when you look at those statistics from the 2022 season. Obviously, 17% with over 20 yards. That's not a small number. I think that he's a very versatile quarterback, and obviously from the statistics that you showed, even in 2022, he was able to spread the ball out. It could be 5 yards, 10 yards, 20 yards, under, over. He was able to do it all. I just really do think it was a scheme that they just needed him to check it down. They had so much talent that it's just what do you do with all this talent? Well, if you have a lot of talent, you can afford to do the shorter passes and get more yardage out of it. You don't need your quarterback to be slinging it all the time. Well, when we get him in a Broncos system that has some receivers, but honestly needs a guy that's going to be able to check it down deep, I think that he's the guy to do it. I don't think that Sean Payton would have drafted him unless he felt that he could be that guy.
Well, that's some of my concern with the Broncos, more specifically. Who do we have that's able to get separation on anybody? We have Marvin Mims and we have Troy Franklin now. Those are our two speedy guys. And Marvin Mims is small, and Troy Franklin is kind of an unknown commodity in terms of NFL.
He's
standards.
Older too.
He is older. And our other two receivers are three are Cortland Sutton, who can't get separation to save his life, so Russell Wilson had to just throw it up and pray that he would come down with it, which worked because we were destined to win going away in the middle of the season to give us hope, and it didn't matter. And then we have Tim Patrick, who can't stay healthy, and because he's torn his Achilles twice, I'm very suspicious of what his vertical is nowadays, and if he has really any speed at all.
I don't know how well he's going to do.
Yeah. And then we have Josh Reynolds, who we acquired in free agency, who came from the Detroit Lions last year. I think he had 6 touchdowns, 6 or 5 touchdowns, and he had just under 700 yards receiving, which
He's pretty good.
is fine. He'll be a decent wide receiver 4-3.
He's gonna be decent. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and with Tim Patrick, where do you put Tim Patrick? What is he, wide receiver number 2?
No, not anymore.
I didn't think so, because
No.
how could you make Tim Patrick wide receiver number 2? He's always hurt. We haven't seen him play in 2 years in a row. And
Yes.
I think honestly, I think our order of receivers should be Sutton at 1, unfortunately, and then Mims.
Yep.
Josh Reynolds, and then Troy Franklin.
Josh Reynolds. I would agree with that. That's why I think I'm I think maybe a little bit higher on Josh Reynolds than I should be. But when you look at our roster, I'm like, I look at his age. He doesn't have a big history of being injured. He did decently with Detroit. I'm like, he's a decent 3 receiver. And like you said, Tim Patrick, we don't know how he's gonna do. He got injured 2 back-to-back years, and he had like 2 season-ending injuries. Receivers don't come back from that. He's also older now. Like, he's not gonna be the same guy that he was back in 2022. I think 2022, 2021, I can't remember, but like 2 seasons.
It was in 2021. It was in 2021.
Yes.
And then 2022, it was the big Russell Wilson hype year, and then he got hurt. We were like, oh,
he got hurt.
Oh no, but I think we'll be fine. We'll make the playoffs anyway. And then we all know how that went. We got murdered on national television on Christmas Day, and as a delayed Christmas gift, the Broncos front office fired Nathaniel Hackett. So, but I think
Merry Christmas.
I think Josh Reynolds is kind of like a Russell Gage. Now, Russell Gage hasn't played, it appears, since 2022, which makes sense. But Russell Gage has never had over 1,000 yards receiving. In 2022, he had 426 yards with Tampa Bay. In 2021, with Atlanta, he had he had almost 800 yards twice. So I think Josh Reynolds is going to be like a Russell Gage edition, where he's not going to be your playmaker, but he's going to be a decent slot receiver. Marvin Mims will probably take the slot. Yeah, if you need him on a third down, he'll probably get overlooked. Not that that's something you really want in a receiver. Like, you don't want the Scotty Miller treatment all the time, where people just forget about you. But he'll be a decent receiver. He'll be a decent addition. He'll make Bo Nix's life a tad bit easier. And what I like too, I like part of the media that thinks that this is a quarterback competition between Bo Nix and Zach Wilson. This is the farthest thing from a quarterback competition between Bo Nix and Zach Wilson. We drafted Bo Nix at 12, and he's 24 years old. Is to start him this year. Zach Wilson is going to be his backup. All this is for Zach Wilson is the Mitchell Trubisky treatment that the Bills gave him in, I think, 2022, after he departed from the Bears. I
think the Bears, yes.
Yeah, exactly, the Bears. And that's all this is. It's just a little bit of a career reset for him. And then after this year, in 2 years, he'll be off to somewhere else, and some other poor team will try him, and it won't work. And so, that I think that's exactly what this is. This is not a quarterback competition at all. Bo Nix is the unofficial but obvious starter.
No, I completely agree. I also think when you look at how Sean Payton and, I know quarterback, especially quarterback-driven head coaches, they'll say whatever they need to say. They just drafted the guy. But Sean Payton has been talking about how Bo Nix is a lot further along than the other guys in the quarterback room. That, especially coming from a guy like Sean Payton, who's been there, done that. He had Drew Brees. That means something. It's not a quarterback conversation. It's very much like the Daniel Jones and Drew Lock conversation, where it's just we talk about it, but we all already kind of know who that guy really is. Now, will it vary on will Bo Nix pan out? Will he not? That's still to be determined. But I think we can both confidently say that it's probably going to be Bo Nix.
Yeah. I don't see this being a quarterback competition in the slightest. No. Speaking of quarterbacks, I think it is time we move on to our next and final segment of the night. Something that's very interesting to me in sports in general is the quarterback position. It is the most unique and the most interesting position in all of sport. In all of sports, it is the most not taking into account positional sports. Can Bo break the quarterback carousel? I forgot about that graphic. in all of sports, not excluding individual sports like tennis and golf, in team sports, the quarterback is the most important position on the field in any sport possible anywhere in the world. Now, if you take a look at these last 10 Super Bowl winners, you have the Chiefs 2 years in a row, you have the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Chiefs again, Patriots, Eagles, Patriots, Broncos, and the Patriots. In 9 out of 10 of them, you had franchise, possible Hall of Fame quarterbacks. 8 out of these 9 are definite Hall of Famers. Stafford might be, we don't know. The ring helped. If you got enough, you think he'll sneak in?
I think he's yes.
He might sneak in just because the fans love him, and I understand that. If he wins another ring, it would solidify it. I don't think he'll win another ring, but if he did win another ring, he'd be a shoo-in. The only exception to all these teams is, of course, the 2017 Eagles, who had a little bit of a quarterback anomaly that year, and a lot of people forget about the Eagles. Actually, Nick Foles only started the last 3 games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't start like a bunch of games. He started the last 3 games and then led them to this insane playoff run. So anyway, the Eagles are a complete outlier there. Now, that is, again, the single most important position in sports. If you don't have a franchise quarterback, you don't win the Super Bowls. Especially anymore. Especially as of 10 years ago. If you don't have the quarterback, you need a incredible superstar team. And the 49ers have tried to do it twice, and they have failed twice. Because Patrick Mahomes has stopped them twice. And what is Patrick Mahomes? Their franchise Hall of Fame quarterback. Exactly. So, what I would like to do now is I would like to talk about my own quarterback hierarchy. And we're going to go through several tiers. And we're going to go from too soon to tell to terrible to all the way up to the best of the best. And I'll give little explanations for each, and then afterwards, Micah will be free to critique me, and I will be very angry because no one critiques me. No. So
I'm coming in.
All right. So first, my first tier is too soon to tell, and these are going to be teams that have rookies or quarterbacks who have sort of unknown potential, and I think that these teams are going to be the Broncos, the Patriots, the Titans, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Commanders. 5 of these teams have rookie quarterbacks that they drafted this year. The Titans I have in the too soon to tell category, mostly because I don't know what to think of Will Levis. I don't know if he's good. I don't know if he's bad. All I know is that last year he threw 4 touchdowns to DeAndre Hopkins in 1 game and then didn't do really anything else the rest of the season. Could you chalk that up to team problems? Could you chalk that up to coaching problems? Probably not, because they fired Mike Vrabel and that was stupid. But
that was a horrible idea.
It was a very bad decision. But I still think it is too soon to tell with Will Levis, and I think he has more in the tank to give, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to put the Titans in the too soon to tell category. In the next category is the bad, just plain bad. And we have the Panthers, the Browns, and the New York or New Jersey Giants. And I mean, the unique team in this category is the Browns. And the reason I think they're unique is because they paid Deshaun Watson a ton of money, and he's been mediocre at best, and nobody likes him because of the things he did at particular team-sanctioned massage times with the Texans. And he's overall... Yes, exactly. And he's overall just not a cool guy. And last year, he didn't even play the last half of last season. And was that due to injury issues? Did he quit on the team? I don't know what that was. But anyway, I will move on to the next slide, or to the next tier, which is not the future. These quarterbacks are definitely not the future of these teams. They're not going to get anything done. They might make playoff appearances, maybe, within the next 1 to 2 years, but the quarterbacks that these teams have, they're just not it. And that's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, the New Orleans Saints, and the Seattle Seahawks. The Raiders, I'm not sure what's going on with their situation. They have Gardner Minshew, and they have Aiden O'Connell. Minshew seems like he's going to be the starter, but O'Connell seems like he has maybe more upside. Geno Smith is terrible. I don't know what else to say. He had a contract year, and now he's terrible. And Derek Carr has 1 playoff appearance and also 1 playoff loss. The next tier is going to be good short-term quarterbacks. Now, this tier is a little bit more interesting because they could fit into other tiers, but for instance, if we go with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is also old. Aaron Rodgers is a good short-term solution for the Jets if they put the roster around him. Have they put the roster around him? I think they maybe have. Now, if you look at the Falcons could also be too soon to tell because of Michael Penix Jr. Yeah, that was a very interesting draft pick from their front office, but the Falcons are going to go with Kirk Cousins because they paid him a boatload of money. So, Kirk Cousins is a good short-term solution. Again, I think he has 1 playoff win in his entire career. I think they'll win the division this year with Kirk Cousins, but they won't go beyond the divisional round at all, maybe ever. So we'll see what they have in store. And again, the Rams, Stafford, he's getting old. He gets hurt a lot. He's resilient. We like Stafford, but he's not going to stick around for another 3 years, maybe maximum, and that's being generous. My next tier is maybe has the guy. Now that we got the Buccaneers, we got the Steelers, the Colts, the 49ers, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys. We'll talk about this tier later. It's probably my most controversial tier. Now, probably has the guy are teams that their quarterbacks have proved something. They've proved something. For instance, the Texans. C.J. Stroud took a terrible, dawdling, frankly, a not very good roster and made them playoff contenders. And they actually won a playoff game against Joe Flacco, which is impressive considering who Joe Flacco was at the end of last year. So those are who these teams are. And then the top slide is the only 4 remaining teams: the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Bills. These teams are not moving an inch off of their quarterbacks. They are going to stay exactly where they are, and as long as they are able to pay their quarterbacks the money they want, they're going to keep those quarterbacks because they are the only things that are keeping these franchises relevant. And that is my tier list that the committee in my head has decided to endow this broadcast with. What are your thoughts now? I think that is going to be most interesting, and I will be happy to refute exactly how you are wrong, because you will be wrong. No, I'm kidding.
Wow.
No,
okay,
no. That's no. I'd love to hear how you refute this list.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think looking at the list, you got some interesting ones. I think the too soon to tell is honestly pretty reasonable. I would say, just to add on to the Titans point, the Titans as a whole, Will Levis, this is pretty much his reset year. This is kind of like, we can look at it kind of as like his rookie season again. So I would agree with too soon to tell. I didn't really have any problems until the very next tier. So okay. You have bad, just bad. Panthers, absolutely agree. The Giants, I would maybe move them up into the not the future, because Daniel Jones is not the future. Get him out of here. I don't care what you do. Drew Lock, he's going to be a manageable backup. I don't know how long he'll be like the backup, the starter, but I think he's going to be better than Daniel Jones. I feel like it's not the future, but he's a placeholder. Would you like to talk about that one first?
Well, I don't understand how you can't look at that quarterback room and see it's just awful. It's just awful. When Drew Lock was with the Broncos in 2020, and we thought, this is the guy, this is the future. We're gonna get out of the quarterback carousel. It's finally over. He threw 16 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, and he got hurt in the second week. Drew Lock is also not your guy. He's not good. Now, again, it's the argument I made before. He probably won't be good this year. He could be awful this year. But if Dable is allowed to get his hands on him earlier in the season and work with him in a serious way instead of just putting him on scout team, I don't know how you see Drew Lock's tape before and just see him throwing it up to the sideline and watching it get picked and say, that's he's trying to make a play, but it's awful. It's sincerely terrible play. And, I think the stat was when in 2020, when he went into play action and then threw, his completion percentage went way up. Well, the Broncos went, what if we make every play a play action? Well, that's not how that's not how play action works. That's not how play action works. You need a run game to set it up, obviously. That's the whole point of it. You can't just run play action 3 snaps in a row and be like, well, I don't know why it didn't work. You know why it didn't work.
Yes.
So I think the Giants' situation is just all around bad. Daniel Jones is bad. Drew Lock is bad. And then there's Tommy DeVito. We're not talking about Tommy DeVito. No, absolutely not. We're not talking about Tommy Cutlets, all right? We're not.
No.
And he's not a serious starter, so.
Yes. Okay, if I may interject, though.
Yes.
In terms of Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, like I said, he's horrible, he's bad. In terms of him for this category, absolutely. Drew Lock, though, I understand your point. I understand where you're coming from with that. But also, you got to look at who his head coach was. You guys had Pat Shurmur. Do you know who Daniel Jones' rookie head coach was? Pat Shurmur. He was one of the reasons why Daniel Jones was drafted. Now you get Drew Lock, who he's been through a situation with Pete Carroll. He played decently in the last couple of games that he actually did start. And now you get him in an offensive system with a guy that developed Josh Allen. You're telling me that guy, that head coach, isn't going to be able to at least maintain Drew Lock and be like, all right, you need to buckle down a little bit. I'm not saying he's the future. I'm just saying he's a placeholder. I think that with the coaching that the Giants have in place, he's gonna be able to actually not be amazing, not be good, but just be a placeholder at least until next season.
I mean, you could make an argument for that, or you could take a look at his 59% completion percentage, his 28 touchdowns to 23 interceptions, and his 9-14 win-loss record, and go, maybe he's just not very good. Maybe
he may very well may not be.
Maybe Drew Lock is just terrible, and for some reason led the Broncos to a 4-1 record over the course of the last 5 games of the 2019 season.
With Pat Shurmur.
How he did that is beyond me. But then the next season and the next seasons, if you don't count the outlier of the Eagles game last year with the Seahawks, where for some reason he was good all of a sudden, I just don't see how you can look at Drew Lock and go, this guy is a manageable starter as he is now. Because I think there's only 2 ways you can look at Drew Lock right now. He's either terrible or he's be like a Cooper Rush, who we can just throw him in and he can start right away. These are the only 2 ways you can look at Drew Lock. And right now, he's bad. Again, and I think that the Seahawks win over the Eagles last year has more to do with Pete Carroll's coaching than anything, than Drew Lock just going in there and chucking up the ball. That is pure luck. But Pete Carroll not losing to the Eagles once while with the Seahawks, that comes down to coaching and being able to out-coach the other team.
Absolutely.
So
no, I completely agree with you.
So anyway, we can leave it at that. What do you think about the next tier of not the future? No, yes, not the future. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Also, just really quick, Pat Shurmur, he wasn't the Broncos head coach. He was the offensive coordinator. I just need to clear that up. He was the head coach of the Giants. But
yes,
so
I think when did we bring him in? Did Fangio bring him in?
I think it was Fangio. It might have been the last year of Joseph, but I believe it was Fangio.
I think it was Fangio. Shocking that we fired him. Anyway.
I know. Yep.
So the next tier, not the future.
Yes.
Raiders,
so not
Saints,
the future.
And Seahawks.
I like this one. I feel like the one team on this tier that I may disagree with here are the Seattle Seahawks, just because they cleaned house. They have a new head coach, and yes, Geno Smith is god awful. And Sam Howell is not the best, but I want to see what happens with this new head coach. I don't think Geno Smith is the answer, but I'm really curious about Sam Howell. Watching him on the Commanders, obviously there was Ron Rivera. He was horrible, absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see Sam Howell in the Seahawks situation. I think he actually does have a pretty decent chance of getting in the starting lineup. And with that new head coach, I'd like to see what happens. So I would put it down to too soon to tell.
See, but that's kind of like a Falcon situation. You could put Sam Howell in the too soon to tell, but Geno Smith is definitely not the future. But yes, you could also make the argument that Sam Howell is good for passing yards, and that's it. Sam Howell is low budget Baker Mayfield. That is what Sam Howell is.
At this moment, I'd agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So as it stands now, unless Sam Howell starts the last 10 games of the season and they go 6-4 with him.
Yes.
Then, you could consider him, okay, maybe there's something there. But if he starts the last 10 games of the season and he goes even 4-6, there's still question marks about Sam Howell and if he can be a starter. I don't think he's starter material. Again, I think he's backup material.
Okay.
Now, again, Geno Smith. That's all I have to say about Geno Smith.
Yeah, if we're gonna put Geno Smith as like the starter for the Seahawks for next season, not the future. I'm sorry, but
Certainly
just because
not.
of the quarterback room, I think there can be room for debate.
Certainly, that I understand the Sam Howell take, but still, as it stands
Geno,
now, Sam
not.
Howell's not the future either, and Geno Smith is even less so the future.
We can beg to differ on that one.
Fine, but you're wrong. Next year, good short term. Rams, Jets, and Falcons.
This is a very interesting one. Kirk Cousins, obviously, I agree with that. Matthew Stafford, I do agree with that one. Aaron Rodgers is very interesting because he is 40 years old. He just came off of a, what did he do? What was the injury
Achilles.
again? Do you remember? Okay, so he blew out his Achilles, right?
Yeah.
They have a ton of primetime games this year. I'm not sure if you
Jets?
looked at the Jets. Oh yeah.
Remember when they gave another quarterback who was traded to a team a lot of primetime games?
Are you talking about that Wilson guy?
Yes, Zach Wilson.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
No.
No.
more like I'm going to Denver and I'm going to suck now, Wilson.
Yes.
More like
Russell Wilson. Yeah.
No, that he's like Voldemort. I will not say his name. I will not.
No, that's fair. Number three for the Broncos.
He is my personal villain.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you seem to be relatively okay with that tier. Understandable.
Well, if I may add just really quick for the Jets, I'm skeptical of Rodgers just because of his injury, just because of how old he is, and just because of the Jets roster. He could be a good short term, but I really don't know what we're looking at for, I guess, how good short term he is. Like, I don't even know if he's any gonna be like good anymore. He could be decent.
I think good short term could be like a year to 2 years.
I give him this year, but I don't know. I need to see it to believe it.
That's fair. I think he'll be good this year. And by good, I mean good, not great. He won't have another MVP year, but
no.
I think he will be at a minimum serviceable, I think.
Okay. I'm curious. I'm really curious to see about that because I don't know. I really don't.
We will see.
Next tier.
The next tier, of course, is maybe has the guy. And this is probably going to cause the most conflict from anyone ever.
Yeah, no, I myself have some issues with this one. Buccaneers, I think right now we can say that they maybe have their guy. The Steelers are a toss up. I don't really. They might have their guy. It's hard to tell for me because I'm like Justin Fields is so raw, and Russell Wilson. I'm like he's really not that good either.
I think
I
with
think yeah,
I think with a Mike Tomlin offense, they could make Russell Wilson work for a little while. That's why I mean for a little while. But that's the problem is I don't think Russell Wilson is even a good short term solution. That's why I didn't put him in that
no,
tier. And Justin Fields, frankly, outside of the Bears, an unknown commodity. We don't really know what Justin
pretty
Fields
much.
is. He's a lot of run around. He's a lot of throw the ball deep. He's a lot of try to make your own plays because your offensive line is terrible. The Packers won't have that much of an issue. Or Steelers. The Steelers won't have that much of an issue. A Mike Tomlin coach team over a Matt Eberflus coach team is going to be significantly better for, I think, both quarterbacks than both of their previous situations. So I think in terms of maybe has their guy Russell Wilson for a little while, and then maybe has their guy Justin Simmons for the foreseeable future after Russell Wilson. Or if Russell Wilson sucks, then they can throw in Justin Fields, and he's had experience and he'll be ready to play.
That's fair. I think now that you explain that tier a little bit more, I would agree with you more on the Steelers. The Colts, though, I see where you're coming from with it. I really do. I really like Anthony Richardson, though. If he can stay healthy, which is a big if, I think he has the potential to be their guy. I would probably.
You think the Colts would go up a tier?
I'm not saying a full tier. I think they're in between probably and maybe.
Yeah, I had a lot of doubts about Anthony Richardson when he was coming out of Florida. He didn't really show much in terms of passing. He showed a lot more in terms of rushing, and I never liked that in a quarterback when their main thing is rushing. But he actually showed a lot of potential in the beginning of that the 2023 season, and if he didn't get hurt, they could have won the division instead of the Texans. Like that last game where it came down to that flat where Gardner Minshew threw it and the backup running back dropped it. I don't think they might have not even have been in that situation. They might have already clinched the division at that point. But if they were in that situation, I think they would have more handily beat the Texans that night if Anthony Richardson is able to stay healthy. Now, if he's not able to stay healthy, then that brings up a lot of questions about his ability to play in the future. So
yes,
I think you're somewhat right there that they're in between tiers, but I'd say that Anthony Richardson's health is too much of a question mark to put them even too close to the probably has their guy tier.
Okay. No, that's fair. I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the 49ers, I was going to debate you on this, but I think you're probably right putting him in this tier just because we've seen Brock Purdy. We've seen what he can do with a really good team against Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't think that I'm not sure what he is. I think he's good, but I don't know if he's that guy. The Cardinals, I actually am going to disagree with you on. Coming out of the draft, I was a little bit iffy on Kyler Murray. He showed a lot of promise for the past couple years, but I don't know. I feel like he might be just a good short-term quarterback. I feel like they might move on from him.
That's understandable. The reason I put them there is that, well, first of all, the negatives about Kyler Murray. How committed is he to the game? Like, seriously.
Exactly.
That they need to put, stipulations in his contract about you need to watch this much film and that
That's ridiculous.
He plays worse on double XP weekends or whatever with Call of Duty. Or
that's ridiculous.
He goes on social media and he starts taking down stuff having to do with the Cardinals, and that he generally just doesn't like being hit. You can see it every time he's hit. You can see him every time he's hit. He's like, I wish I played baseball. I wish I played baseball.
Yes.
Because
and he's so small.
He is. He's undersized. And, you could visibly see it in the wild card game in 2020. 2021 against the Rams when they got beat 34-11 and they got mauled by that Rams. Now that Rams team was good, they weren't a slouch, but you could visibly see, like after even the first quarter, like it was a game still, but
you could see Kyler Murray start to quit. You could just see him start to quit in that game. So I have serious questions about Kyler Murray's commitment to the game in general.
Yes.
So, his good sides, he played baseball. He throws a really pretty football. He's able to make plays. He's incredibly talented on the athletic front. But I think that commitment issue is a much larger piece, especially for quarterbacks. Than any other position. And I think it's a huge piece to note that over any of his athleticism or any of his playmaking ability. Do the Cardinals want to stick with a guy who's a drama queen long term? I don't know if they do.
Yes, that's why I'm jumping the gun with the Cardinals. I will say that. I think he's going to be a good short term, but how we look at him right now, he's a maybe.
That's why I think they probably have the guy as well, is because they paid him a lot of money.
Oh,
they paid him a lot of money, and they don't.
He made them.
Yes, but they don't seem to be even wanting to look to other options at all. I don't think it's even in there. Who's their head coach? Rich Gannon?
Yes.
Talk about a bad coaching signing. That's not good. I don't think Rich Gannon even has the want to move off of him because because Kyler Murray, you know what he is and you know what he isn't. And what he is a fantastic playmaker, and what he isn't is Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes.
No.
He's not that. But I think if you want to seriously win games, I think you have to seriously consider moving off of Kyler Murray within the next 2 years.
Yeah.
But as it looks right now, they'll probably keep him. He's probably their guy for the foreseeable future. I want to like him, but I don't like the way he looks. I don't like his PR at all.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. I'm still gonna stick with the Cardinals as a good short term, but because of everything that you've just said, like I think that for right now maybe is the best tier. Even though I'm looking ahead, I'm just like he's gonna be short term in my opinion. Now the Cowboys are very interesting. I think that that's a definite maybe. I don't know. I don't know how much I trust Jerry Jones. If I'm being completely honest, I feel like he's getting older. Dak is. He's come out and said that he doesn't want a ton of money, which we don't know how true that is. It's Jerry Jones. He doesn't typically make the best signings. He doesn't do it in a timely manner, and I feel like he might be getting a little bit fed up with Dak. That or he's just to drive up the media.
That makes sense. But the thing we have to understand about Jerry Jones, what does Jerry Jones hate for his franchise? Almost more than anything else. It's that he hates being irrelevant.
Yes.
And so Dak basically has this Cowboys franchise held hostage because of Jerry Jones' own ego, that he might not be willing to move off of Dak because Dak says the right things. He's a stand-up guy. He beats up on terrible teams. They're in the playoff conversation every year. At some points, they're in the Super Bowl conversation. That's what Jerry Jones cares about. Now, if I were Jerry Jones and I were making the moves, I would be so non-hesitant to move off of Dak this year because it's the last year of his contract. They're paying him $40 million a year. I wouldn't pay Dak $40 million a year. I don't know if you'd pay Dak $40 million a year, but I certainly wouldn't.
No, I would not.
So, if the Cowboys, again, I think the Cowboys are kind of like the Bills. They're out of their Super Bowl window now. They have a very talented team. They're always very good. Their teams that they have, they're always very good. They're never Super Bowl ready, and they're never that special. They're not. So, I think if the Cowboys want to be serious about winning a Super Bowl sometime in the next 10 years, you have to move on. You have to seriously consider moving on from Dak Prescott. And Dak was best in his rookie year. And what did they have in his rookie year in 2015? You had a rookie Ezekiel Elliott, who was at his best his rookie year. You had a run game.
They had Jason Witten, Des
Mhm.
Bryant, Ezekiel Elliott, an all-pro offensive line with a decent defense.
Yeah.
It
So
was insane.
I don't know what they're doing this year, signing Ezekiel Elliott and then acting like, oh, well, we're gonna be good again because we signed a fat Ezekiel Elliott. Like it's
No.
not going to be the same at all. So I think they maybe keep Dak, but I think there's also a possibility they move off of Dak. I just don't
That's fair.
understand. I don't understand why you would keep Dak in a league that is incredibly quarterbacks. I would take Jared Goff over Dak Prescott.
Ooh, really?
I would 100% take Jared Goff over Dak Prescott. Well, you know, you can look at my next tier, and I have the Lions ranked in that tier above the Cowboys.
Yes.
I would 100% take Jared Goff over Dak Prescott because I think Jared Goff has more leverage than Dak Prescott. Why does Jared Goff have more leverage than Dak Prescott? Because Jared Goff has been to a Super Bowl. He didn't win, but he's been to a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 conference championships in the NFC. I think Jared Goff has a significant amount more leverage than Dak would have in any type of contract signing. So, what do you think about the Cowboys being in that maybe has their guy tier?
No, I mean, I'm gonna be a little bit biased here. I think that Dak is a fine quarterback. I don't think he might win you a Super Bowl, maybe if they can win a playoff game. But the problem is they haven't won a playoff game. He's been the quarterback since 2016, and I just don't think that he's proven enough. Kind of like what you were saying, and I think that's probably why Jared Goff is a higher tier than him. Because Goff has been there. He has done that. He hasn't won a Super Bowl, but he played against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. That has to say something. I think the tier is fine. I don't have a lot of complaints about it. I just think that Dak, if I could put Dak in his own little category, I would, because he's good. He's a really good quarterback. I think he's a top 12 quarterback, but he's not the guy that's going to get the job done. And the Cowboys, I don't think will ever realize that. Sorry if there are any Cowboys fans watching, but that's just the truth.
I'm not sorry at all.
Never mind.
Especially when you consider that they got smacked around by a young and inexperienced Packers team last year.
Oh
and
my
Dak
God, yes.
floundered like a fish out of water. So, I think that's a good jumping off point, considering that the Packers and the Lions are both teams we talked about, and they're in our next tier. In the next tier,
exactly,
it probably has the guy: Eagles, Chargers, Texans, Jaguars, Dolphins, Packers, Lions.
The only teams that I will say are debatable, and I think the first one is Justin Herbert with the Chargers. He got paid a ton of money. I think he's a very, very good quarterback. I think that he has the potential to win a Super Bowl. I would put him in. He's not moving an inch. I don't think that the roster is with him, but he's such a good quarterback. I think he deserves to be talked at the same ranks of, especially Lamar Jackson, but also like a Burrow or a Josh Allen, just in the aspect that they have the guy that has the talent. He just needs the pieces around him and a head coach that's actually gonna like push him in that team to go further than the past head coach.
That makes sense. I could see Justin Herbert being in that next tier of they're not moving an inch off their quarterback, especially with the acquisition of Joe Alt in the draft. That's a huge pickup for them. They need offensive line help. They've needed offensive line help, and Brandon Staley was just dumb. Brandon Staley was the analytics guy that everybody hated. Nobody liked him.
Exactly. So, well, also, if I can add on really quick as well, they gutted the entire Chargers team.
They did.
Of all of their old talent, besides Justin Herbert. They didn't even draft a quarterback. They drafted a tackle.
That's true.
That says something.
Well, and so Austin Eckler's gone. Keenan Allen is gone. Mike Williams is gone. Is Khalil Mack gone?
He might still be on the team, but I'm not sure.
I think Derwin James is still on the team.
He's still on the team, but they
Yeah.
gutted that entire offense in Camp
They
2.
did, which was the correct move, I think, because you need
Yes.
to rebuild, especially after Brandon Staley completely ruined your cap space.
Oh my God, yes.
Ruined it. The reason I think Justin Herbert probably has their guy and is not moving an inch. If you take a look at his record over the regular season, he has 30 wins and 32 losses. Now, I understand that you could chalk that up to Brandon Staley and coaching and other administrative issues. But at some point, when you've been starting, effective of 2020, the quarterback has to take blame, especially when you are beating the Jaguars by a multitude of scores in a playoff game, in the wild card, and then you blow it. You blow it phenomenally.
Yeah.
It's not like, when the Falcons played the Patriots in Super Bowl 51, Matt Ryan didn't take all the blame, but he, there was definitely blame for fumbling the ball and not completing passes.
He had a great
and not
game
changing
though
stuff
too.
to line. He had a great game until the last 17 minutes of it.
Yeah.
So, it's 4 quarters, not 3. You gotta finish the season. You gotta finish the game. And the reason I think Justin Herbert, again, incredibly talented. I think he has 11 comebacks and 14 game-winning drives. That's somebody who's innately clutch. But and I'm saying this looking into the future, if John Harbaugh restructures this team, if Jim Harbaugh, yes, if Jim Harbaugh restructures this team and puts good talent around Herbert and allows him to throw the ball deep finally, and they have a decent running game, they have good protection, they have an above average defense, and Herbert still can't win more than 9 or 10 games in a year, then I will have some serious questions, which is why I think he's in the probably has their guy category. Until Herbert has a season where they win more than 11 games and get at least to the divisional round, then I'll say they're probably not moving an inch off of him. But he hasn't proven anything in the playoffs, and he's proven very little in the regular season.
Yeah. Okay. You're thinking more now. I'm thinking more future.
I'm also thinking for the future, but I'm looking at the
The
glass is
literal
empty.
now.
You're looking at the glass half full. I'm going to look at the glass half empty.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. This makes sense.
The good thing about being a natural pessimist sometimes is that I'm eventually right.
Well, listen, we'll see.
But I think you're right. Looking at Harbaugh and looking at the new structure of this team and saying,
yes,
I think he's going to succeed, and I think he's going to succeed too. But I think you should also take into account, even with all that talent that he had before, mediocre seasons, terrible way to finish the playoff. He went 5-8 as a starter last year. Very bad, very rough. If he continues to play in a mediocre fashion in the future, there'll be questions about him. But I see where you're coming from as well.
Okay, that's fair.
So, back to it.
Yes. So I think the Texans, I do agree with that one. I really do like CJ Stroud. I need to see more. So he's definitely a probably. The Jaguars and the Dolphins, I'm going to put these two into one. They're very interesting. I like Trevor Lawrence coming out of the draft. I think he had a lot of talent, but I have some serious questions about how clutch he is. It's very similar, I think, to Justin Herbert here. Trevor Lawrence, I think he can be a good quarterback, but I would maybe put him in the maybe category just because we haven't seen enough out of him. He's been good, but he hasn't been that type of guy where you're just like, he's probably the guy. I think for the Jaguars, they look at him and they're like, yeah, they'll probably sign him, but I don't think he's going to be that locked in permanent guy.
He's been good, but he hasn't been special at all.
Exactly.
At all. I mean, they had the Chiefs on the ropes in that divisional, the same divisional where they beat the Chargers the week before and they came back. They had the Chiefs on the ropes for certain parts of that game, and they could not get the job done at all. So, there's serious questions about Trevor Lawrence is probably the greatest prospect Maybe besides Caleb Williams, he's up there. But probably the greatest prospect coming out of college football in the NFL.
Well, you can't forget about Andrew Luck as well.
See, again, there's a debate. There's a debate to be had there. But I mean, how many national championships did Andrew Luck win? But
That's true. That's true.
But again, one of the greatest college football prospects, and he hasn't lived up to the hype at all, in my opinion.
Yes.
Now, again, you're right. They're probably going to sign him. He's probably going to be the quarterback of the future because I don't see how you move off of him at this point. He's still young. He's still got a lot to prove. You just cannot have 2 end of season collapses like you just did last year. Actually, well, there wasn't 2 end. It was the season before was it wasn't a collapse. It was end of season resurrection, basically.
Yes.
And then this season, it was like, wow, they're 8-3. They're going to win their division. Then they had the collapse.
They fell apart. I had Trevor Lawrence in fantasy. He played horrible down the stretch. No, I'm serious. Listen, you can do whatever you want with fantasy football, and like I understand it's a bit ridiculous, but also with Trevor Lawrence, like if you just look at him statistically, if I were to compare him to Russell Wilson down the stretch versus Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson was more consistent with what he was doing. Trevor Lawrence was not consistent at all.
You know, if you're going to be consistent, at least be consistently bad.
See? There you go.
Because at least you know where you're going to get. So
Exactly. And I think moving on to the Dolphins as well, because I think this is also a very good compliment here. I like Tua. I've been a big fan of Tua since college, but I don't think he's the guy. Something about him tells me that he's not. He's in some aspects, I kind of look at him as like maybe a couple tiers below a Lamar, just because he hasn't won any MVPs. He's Lamar without any MVPs. I think he can throw a ball decently, but he definitely still has a short arm, and I don't think he's that clutch. Look at the offense that he had around him last year. He went to Kansas City, and he played horrible. And you can say, oh, the coaching, it was a rough game. The coaching, maybe they could have done different things there. The weather wasn't that great. No, at the end of the day, if you have that guy and you think that he's going to be locked in, he would have won that game or at least put up a fight. There was nothing there. So I would even put him in the maybe category. Take him down one. He's going to get paid. He's obviously going to get paid, and that's an organization decision because of the Miami Dolphins are. They're a team that wants to be in the conversation, but they're never going to get to that top. They're always about profit. And so for that reason, I think they're going to sign Tua, but he's not that locked in, not going to move an inch type of guy. They're going to treat him as such, and they have been treating him as such, but I don't think he has the talent.
Which is exactly why I put him in the probably has their guy category, because it appears to me that Mike McDaniel has a lot of respect for him coming out of Alabama. It appears that they're not going to move off of him. Especially when you have a situation where you go and get weapons and you mortgage at least part of your future to go get somebody like Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle, and you have all these speedy receivers and all these weapons in order to elevate your quarterback. You have settled with the fact that this is your guy. And so this is how we're going to approach this in order to utilize and maximize his talent. So it appears to me that they're not going to move anywhere off of him. Now, if you have a situation like Kevin Stefanski with Baker Mayfield in 2020, where he literally sabotages his quarterback, then I could see that if Mike McDaniel was doing that with Tua. But instead, he has elevated him by getting him weapons, by getting him a speedy and consistently good run game with Raheem Mostert and a Kane. Anyway,
I think Achan.
I pronounced it wrong twice.
You're fine.
But he has decided to instead elevate his quarterback instead of trying to look elsewhere. So that's why I think they probably have their guy.
I understand where you're coming from with that. I just personally think if the organization was going to do the right thing, their category should be maybe. But because of the organization that they are in and because of their head coach, they are a probably. But they should be a maybe.
I understand. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Okay. And then Packers and Lions.
So Lions, we already discussed the Lions, so I'm not going to cover them too much. I think that Jared Goff he's a good quarterback. He's probably going to be the guy. He's not going to be locked in, but he's probably the guy. Jordan Love is very interesting. he's definitely not bad. Like we've seen that. I think that's pretty clear. Um, I think he's probably going to be the future, and I think he's more than just a short-term quarterback. My only problem is I think he can swing one of two ways. He's either I think right now he's kind of still leaning towards a maybe, but he has the potential of not moving an inch, and which is why I'm like, I think you categorized him correctly, but I personally would just like to see more out of him, just because what from good football that we saw of him, it was still pretty short term and at the end of the season, and I want to see him carry it over. For that reason, looking at it right now, I would still put him at a maybe.
I can see that. I can see that for Jordan Love. Yeah, we'd never seen that before, where a quarterback at the beginning of the season looked fantastic against Chicago, and then looked pretty decent again against Atlanta, and then for the mid stretch of games in the season, just was awful.
Oh,
And then
horrible.
by the end of the year, you're like, oh wow, he's good. And then they put it on the Cowboys, and then they almost beat the 49ers. So I think you're right in that we should probably see more in him before we crown him as Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, or at least as a probably.
Yeah, before we crown him as, Aaron Rodgers' son or anything. But
like the reign after Rodgers, yeah.
Yes, yeah, the third generation of reigning quarterbacks out of Green Bay. But I think that Green Bay is going to stick with him, and I think that with that young talent, also they're still not paying him anything really. So they've got their guy at least for the foreseeable future, and I think
absolutely
probably they're going to stick with him unless he sucks next year, and I think he's only going to grow. I think that's exactly right, that he's only going to grow.
Yes.
So
he'll turn into a probably.
I think they've probably got their guy. So
that's fair. I think I see where you're coming from.
Yes, of course. The last tier of not moving an inch.
Now, I agree with all these teams, but I have to say, I might get a little bit of heat for this, but Lamar, I know he's locked in, and I know he's not moving an inch, but I just don't think he's the guy. Long term, look at it. Listen, I know he can run. We've had this conversation earlier about mobile quarterbacks. He can throw. He's gotten better with throwing, but how many playoff games has he won? With the talent that he had last year, the year before that, and even this year, where he's getting Derrick Henry, who I will say is older, he's still Derrick Henry. I just think that the Ravens are going to be in that conversation of like, oh, they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to get there. But it's like, at the end of the day, your quarterback needs to execute. And Lamar has never been good. I mean, think about it. He lost to what? Didn't he lose to the Texans last year? Was it the Texans?
I cannot remember who in 2022 or 2023.
2023.
They lost to the Chiefs.
Like
they lost 17-10 in the conference championship.
That game shouldn't have been nearly as close as it was. Lamar should have taken that step. He did not take that step. I'm sorry. And I think, so I'm going to just quickly get two done right now. Joe Burrow as well. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's definitely the guy. My only concern is his injuries. He's proven time and time again that he just can't stay healthy. And I think the talent is through the roof with him. My only question for him, which is why maybe, I know he's not moving an inch, but maybe we want to start maybe thinking about he's probably the guy, or he might be the guy, is because of his injuries. Can he stay healthy? We know that when he's healthy, he can get the job done, and he got to the Super Bowl when he stayed healthy. The question is, will he be healthy? How long will he be healthy? We don't know these things.
I think barring injury for both quarterbacks of those franchises, they are going to unequivocally be the guys for their franchises. I don't think there's any debate about it. They're not going to find a better option anywhere, anytime soon.
No.
Soon in the foreseeable future. So, if they're not hurt like 3 seasons in a row, like severe injuries, right, I don't see any way these teams move off of them at all. There's just no possible way That either, and I think Joe Burrow still the highest paid player in the league?
I believe so.
Yeah, and I think what is he getting, like 55 million a year or something
Yeah,
insane?
roughly.
So to get paid 55
He's
million a
good.
year to not play is rough for that
He's
franchise.
he's real good. Like I said, I absolutely love Joe Burrow. I think he has a lot of traits that elite quarterbacks need to have. I'm just so worried that his career is going to be wasted because of injuries.
We'll have to see. You know, his injury last year was a real freak accident. The ligament in his thumb tearing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Complete freak accident. Nobody saw it coming.
Oh my god.
So,
Nobody saw it coming.
yeah. So, I don't know. It depends. But as of right now, all four of those teams are not moving anywhere on quarterback. Again, especially the Chiefs and especially the Bills. They both of those teams have their guy. Again,
I have concerns, but I agree with the top tier.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's my tier list. If you disagree with me, you're wrong, but that's okay. No. Regardless, that will be all today. That is all I have in store. We went on a little longer than I expected, but I'm glad we got it out. I think that is a very fun part of the conversation. So, regardless, I would like to thank my buddy Micah for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll try to do it as frequently as we can, schedule permitting. So
absolutely, yes, absolutely.
We'll have to get it scheduled for next time. So in the meantime, all of you out there, stay happy, stay healthy, and we will see you on the other side. Goodbye. Sounds good.